The air in the courtroom is thick with unease. The room, packed with journalists, grieving parents, and silent onlookers, holds its collective breath as the door creaks open. Two uniformed officers lead in the accused, a man whose very name now evokes fear and disgust. Shackled at the wrists, his expression is eerily calm, his gaze unreadable. The murmur of whispers ripples through the crowd before the judge bangs the gavel, restoring order. Seated in the front row, the families of the victims clutch photographs of their lost children, their faces marked by grief and rage. Some mothers sob quietly, while others glare at the man responsible for their nightmares. A father clenches his fists, his body tense with barely restrained fury. The prosecutor watches intently, his case meticulously prepared. Across from him, the defense attorney shifts uncomfortably. Though duty demands they represent the accused, even they seem uneasy in his presence. The judge, a stern figure in black robes, clears his throat, preparing to begin proceedings. Despite the heavy security presence, a chilling sense of danger lingers. This is not just another trial, it is the reckoning of a monster. The accused takes his seat, and for a moment, silence dominates the room. Then the judge speaks, his voice firm and steady. We are here today to hear the testimony of the accused regarding the charges against him. Mr. Killer's name, do you understand the gravity of your confessions? The killer nods, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his lips. The room seems to hold its breath again, waiting for the horror he is about to unveil. As the courtroom listens in eerie silence, the killer begins to speak, his voice calm yet chilling. His words transport everyone back to a past filled with pain, neglect, and darkness. Flashback. A dimly lit, cluttered apartment. A young boy, no older than 6, cowers in the corner as his drunken father storms toward him. The father's slurred screams echo through the walls before a heavy hand strikes the child. The boy doesn't cry. He has learned that tears only invite more punishment. His mother sits motionless on the couch, lost in her own misery, offering no protection. The scene shifts to a school playground. The same boy, now slightly older, sits alone while other children laugh and play. His clothes are tattered, his face blank. When he tries to join a group, they push him away, mocking his appearance, his silence. He walks away, fists clenched. Years pass. The boy, now a teenager, stares at himself in a cracked mirror. His bruises have faded, but the wounds inside have deepened. He has learned that the world is cruel, that kindness is a myth. His heart hardens. The flashbacks intensify. A dark basement, a helpless animal struggling in his grip. His expression is emotionless as he tightens his hold, fascinated by the power he feels. This is the moment he realizes control can silence his own pain. Back in the courtroom, the killer pauses, his cold eyes scanning the room. Some jurors look horrified, others uncomfortable. The prosecutor watches, unmoved. The families of the victims glare at him, their sorrow turning into fury. The judge's voice breaks the silence. Are you saying your past justifies your crimes? The killer smirks. No, Your Honor, but it explains them. The courtroom is silent, the tension suffocating. Every eye is fixed on the man in the defendant's chair. His hands, though shackled, rest calmly on the table. His voice is eerily steady as he begins to speak. I remember the first one, he says, his lips curling into a faint smirk. It was easier than I expected. Gasps ripple through the room. A mother in the front row clutches her chest, her breathing uneven. The prosecutor remains motionless, his jaw clenched. The judge, though experienced in handling horrific cases, shifts uncomfortably in his seat. The killer continues, his tone disturbingly casual, as if recalling an ordinary memory. She was small, helpless. I watched her for days, learning her routine. The moment she was alone, I acted. She didn't even scream, just wide, terrified eyes. That was my favorite part. A father lunges forward, his rage uncontrollable. Officers restrain him, and the judge orders silence. But the killer is unfazed. He leans slightly forward, relishing the attention. The others were different. Some fought, some begged, but it didn't matter. In the end, they all ended up the same way. Tears streamed down the faces of the victims' families. A juror wipes sweat from his brow. The atmosphere in the room is suffocating, as if evil itself lingers in the air. The judge's voice is ice cold. "You feel no remorse?" The killer tilts his head, as if considering the question. Then, with a chilling smile, he replies, "Why should I? I did what I wanted, and I'd do it again." The courtroom erupts. The gavel slams down repeatedly. But nothing can erase the horror of what has just been spoken. The courtroom explodes in chaos. Gasps, sobs, and furious outbursts echo off the walls. The judge slams the gavel repeatedly, his normally composed face now etched with disbelief and anger. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom!" His voice booms, but the emotions in the room are uncontrollable. In the front row, the victims' families are devastated. A mother wails, clutching her child's photograph to her chest. A father, his hands shaking with rage, lunges forward again, only to be restrained by officers. "You monster!" "You don't deserve to live," he shouts, his voice hoarse with grief. The jurors shift uncomfortably in their seats, some avoiding eye contact with the accused. One woman has turned pale, her hands trembling. A man exhales sharply, his jaw clenched. They were prepared for a difficult case, but nothing could have prepared them for the cold, remorseless words of a killer. In the gallery, reporters frantically scribble notes, their faces reflecting a mix of shock and horror. News cameras capture every reaction, broadcasting the sheer intensity of the moment to the world. Outside, protesters have gathered, their signs held high. "Justice for the innocent! Death penalty for monsters!" The public's outrage has reached a fever pitch, demanding the harshest punishment possible. The judge leans forward, his voice now a measured, icy tone. "You sit here, describing your crimes with no remorse. Do you even understand the gravity of what you've done?" The killer meets the judge's eyes and smirks. "Oh, I understand, Your Honor. I just don't care." A stunned silence blankets the room. The horror of his words settles like a weight on everyone's chest. The judge exhales deeply, composing himself before delivering the next words that will determine the fate of the monster before him. The courtroom is silent, every breath held in anticipation. The judge, his face stern and unyielding, looks down at the man before him. The killer sits relaxed, almost amused, as if the verdict is nothing more than a formality. The judge clears his throat and begins, his voice steady but filled with unmistakable contempt. "After reviewing the evidence, listening to the testimonies, and witnessing your complete lack of remorse, this court finds you guilty on all charges. Your crimes are beyond horrific. They are inhuman. You have shown no regret, no sorrow, and no empathy. For this, you will face the maximum punishment allowed by law." A ripple of relief passes through the victims' families. Some weep, holding on to each other, while others nod solemnly, feeling that, at last, justice has been served. The father who had earlier lashed out remains rigid, his fists clenched, his face unreadable. For him, no sentence will ever bring his child back. The killer, unfazed, tilts his head. "Is that all, Your Honor?" His words send a fresh wave of disgust through the courtroom. The judge glares at him, his patience gone. "You will spend the rest of your life in prison, where you will be forgotten, just as your victims were robbed of their futures. You will never see freedom again." As the gavel strikes for the final time, officers move in, securing the killer as he is led away. Some in the courtroom clap softly, others simply bow their heads in exhaustion. Outside, the world watches. The case has ignited fierce debates. Some call for harsher punishments. Others question the nature of true justice. News anchors dissect every detail. Psychologists analyze the mind of a killer. And society as a whole wonders, did justice truly prevail?